tapped into a podcast by The Smartest Animal, brought to you by A2X LCD, at the intersection of art and authenticity. Visit thesmartestanimal.com for more. The following series was recorded over the course of a year, moderated by Siri, hosted by A2.
Beyond the newsletter, right? And the newsletter is kind of the overarching, hey, here's where you're going to find out about all these other things that I'm doing. Talk to me about the other things that you're doing, because it's a list, man. Music director, music executive production, live band arrangement, kids music, which you talked about being able to talk to parents, right? So let's get into that for a second. Music lessons, again, probably a lot of novices, and you're sharing your live streaming, right? So you got lots of stuff. You tell me where you want to go next, but I'm sure these are the types of updates people can expect to kind of see in the newsletter. So anything you want to talk about on any of those topics?
For sure. So it's funny when you look at the outline for our notes. In essence, that more or less is the layout for the newsletter. I wouldn't say it's like a perfect flow of information and order of things, but this is kind of how I've been approaching it, and how I've been kind of big picture the whole situation of like, where is this creativity? And ultimately, yeah, being creative is cool. Writing rhymes is fun. Making a sick beat is awesome. Performing in front of a couple people that you don't even know is crazy. But is it a profitable activity to me? Like, in the end, like, is there somewhere along the lines where I see this benefiting me in a sense? And that's kind of been the backbone of where all of this creativity is taken, because as it becomes an investment, it has to become a wise investment, and you have to treat it as such. And the opportunity that I've been able to dive into with music direction specifically was to invest in not only the ideas, but the people to make those ideas happen. So July 6th, which is like a month ago from this recording, was when I got to do that music direction with an R&B show. I got to do it with Robert Leslie Jr., who is based in Lincoln, Nebraska, where him and I went to college together, and his colleagues, the Soul Review, Edith Sare, Jaden Keller, and Haley Bice. They all sound fantastic as vocalists. And I really wanted to level up whatever happened from my December 2023 show. My December 2023 show was under A2Nelito. It was not under The Smartest Animal. And the reason why this distinction exists is because A2Nelito is where all of my piano work gets shared under. It's been the most longstanding creative alias that I have, that still exists, because there's been a few. And I did a acoustic piano show in Rockwood Music Hall in New York City for this piano album, which came out in December 2023. And I'm really happy that I did it. It was the first cover album. And I'm really glad that I did that show, because it allowed me to see what I needed to do to improve my live performance for the next time. And the reason why I say improve is because there wasn't a lot of people at this show. Now, it was earlier in the day, and there are other factors that you could say this, that, and the third, but ultimately I felt that the project that I have at A2Nelito as a piano project is really and truly it's very niche, and it's meant for like certain settings. And I feel that for a full band performance, which I'm capable of doing, I would have to invest in more and do more in order to execute that dream. And so we executed that. And I'm very happy to say that we did some things, and as part of our process to market the show and to prepare for the show, that allowed us to have a successful show. Let's start with the vocalist, which I mentioned before. Robert, who was the featured vocalist for this show, and his colleagues who were additional support, not necessarily just background vocalists, because they all had their solos too. All of them did an amazing job of handling the vocals for an R&B an R&B show that I music directed, and we called it Summer R&B in NYC. And we had a set list that was, I'd say, about 60 to 70% covers, and then the rest originals that either the group had written or Robert himself has written. So as of now, it's unreleased. So it was great. The show was great. It was a really great opportunity for me to see how taking this investment into not only the art but the people that helped me make it, how taking this investment paid off, to see results that I otherwise would not have seen had I continued with the live format that I previously had. See, when I started writing music, I started with a group of people, but kind of went out about it a different way. I was also in my very early 20s, so life looked very different at that time. So now that I'm well beyond that and have a better grasp on, where my life is headed and, where my energy can go towards, I was able to kind of sit with myself and see, like, what can I do to make these changes to have these live performances a really well anticipated event. It was really good to hear feedback from people who have been to my solo shows and now have gone to those R&B shows that I just did, and hear how the work paid off. And I think the last piece that I'll say about the show before I'll put a pause on that conversation, at least for the time being, and pass it over to you, is that when it came to marketing the event, this is, I'm going to tell you like I told them when I first met with them, and it was over FaceTime. When I first met with the vocalists about advertising for the show, when we were going to first post about it, which was back in March of 2024, I said, if we do not share any videos and promote this show between now, March, and July, that is the quickest way to ensure that nobody shows up to our show. And I had to set it straight like that because it was really important for us, unsigned artists without funding, trying to make a name for ourselves, for performing in New York for the first time, me performing under a new stage name for the first time. All these firsts, all these in quote unquote unproven acts. It was really important for us to take it upon ourselves to be our biggest fans and promote the show as if we were going to open for Beyonce, because I would give it the same kind of effort. And I think the only difference between the effort that I have for this and the effort that I have for promoting Beyonce is they hit me with a nice, chunk of change for that marketing budget. You understand what I'm saying? That will make a brother work faster for sure. But I think my point is, when you want to fly further, you fly together. And that's what I established from the jump. I wanted them to have the confidence in me as a music director, not only that the show would go well, but that we would take the effort necessary to feel like people came out, which they did, and enjoyed themselves, which they definitely did.
No, that's fantastic. I think again, it leans into, right. Even if you're a musician, you don't just get to go do the music, right? You got to go do you got to do the business, you got to do the marketing, you got to do the back end, right? Do I need merch, right? All the different aspects and questions you got to ask yourself and work you've got to do. I tell my partners all the time, we love to do that. Doesn't mean we get to do that all day long, right? We got to do all the other stuff we don't love to do. So I think, you leaning into being a music director and then taking the marketing, basically straight to heart and saying, hey, how would I promote this otherwise? I think it's great. Second to that, right, just in business marketing, right, it's social proof is everything. And so you guys lean into that as well, right? Let's show the videos. Let's show that we can do. Let's show that we can play, because we're not going to stand up here and say, okay, I'm Beyonce, show up. You know who I am. You know what I do. I don't have to play videos to get you excited about this. You know who I am, right? But you guys, unproven, different names, first time in a city, first time playing together potentially, right? It's important. That social proof means everything, right? And certainly in business, maybe the numbers. In music, it's actually the performance, the art, right? And so, I just applaud you for taking that tactic. the changes between December 23 performance, right, where maybe you weren't as thrilled with the outcomes of that performance versus December or July 24, right? This R&B show in New York. Talk to me about what those specific evolutions of you were, right? You say you changed and you knew that you had to grow in certain ways. Talk to me about what those growth avenues were and where you really saw the biggest changes, and maybe even kind of what led to those changes, if you will.
I think my leadership probably evolved the most because, as you just said, it's not just the music. If I were to put a percentage, this is going to sound wild when I say it, but I truly believe. I mean, I live this, and we had this on the calendar for pretty much like longer than 6 months, 6, 7 months, something like that. So I truly believe this. When I say that I put 85% of my time into non-music stuff and 15% of the time into actually playing the piano for the set that I music directed, that would be a fair assessment. So that 85% was just making sure that as a leader, my rapport was there, that those people had the trust and the confidence in me. And, it started first and foremost with Robert, because we originally had a show for December 2023 that we decided not to go forward with, but I still wanted to have him out in New York and do the show. I wanted to do right by that promise. And it wasn't just, a promise, a pinky promise, it was a promise of, I'm going to hire you to be out here. So once July 6th came on the table, he said yes. And he also recommended that his colleagues come out because they wanted to come out and support anyways. So that kind of gave us a whole range of items musically that get covered, because you got 2 female voices, you got 2 male voices, and you got a band. Anything that you're adding is icing on the cake, in my opinion, because in my mind, in the way that I'm setting up a live performance group, these are what you call core elements. You got piano, you got bass guitar, you got drums, you got high end, you got low end, and then you got these vocals. So that was the sequence of how this show came to light as far as start to end, because it actually was going to be an A2 or the Smartest Animal instrumental show. It was going to be, from the Film Hop catalog, or, covers, or like a blend of DJ set. I don't know what it was going to be. It didn't happen, obviously, because I felt that there was going to be a whole lot more money on the table, in a way of saying, because I didn't take the chance to meet people where they were at, which is why I said earlier, 70% of the songs that we played were songs that people knew. Fallen by Alicia Keys, Leave the Door Open, Silk Sonic, Killing Me Softly with his song Fugees, Say My Name, Destiny's Child, classic songs that people know and recognize from different eras, are songs that we performed. And it's very gratifying now, as you said, the social proof, to see that social proof on my timeline as evidence of the work that we put in to self-promote, because nobody was going to edit those videos except me. I knew that from the jump. And I always said, I'm okay with, doing that, because I've done it before and I've done it so many times. And I don't mind doing that, because I don't mind getting my hands dirty if it means that I'm going to get further along than I have been. And so the leadership, I feel like, evolved the most, because when I first did a band, I'm just so young. My priorities are in different places and that kind of thing. It's young people shit. Like, that's stuff that everybody goes through. It's normal. And one of the things I had to make peace with myself with is understanding that the mistakes that I made as a leader, to establish myself as a creative entity, but still live as AJ and, have that. Those are the lessons that I had to learn the hard way. You lose people along the way, because they see versions and iterations of you that have since expired, because now you're a better leader and you're a better person. And so that, in a sense, motivates me, because I look at those times, and I regretfully look at those times as moments where impressions and the way you make people feel are everything. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I've made everybody that I've interacted with, whether it was online or offline, feel like amazing, because the reality is that's not the case. But I think motivating myself to be a better leader put me in this position where, with so many things going on in AJ's life, A2 Nalito, the smartest animal, as a project, as a creative entity, is still going to move forward and execute on this show. And the people that I worked with, the vocalists specifically, were so kind. I remember leaving I can't remember if it was the first virtual meeting or the first in-person meeting that I had with the group, because I flew out to have a rehearsal with them. That's how dedicated I was to making sure that, they not only understood that I was going to give them the best quality performance, but they had somebody who was on their side. And the text messages that I received from them were amazing, because it was the affirmation that I needed, that I was on the right path. And Robert Leslie Jr. was really the individual to spearhead this whole conversation of, hey, you as a music director, you as an executive producer, go after that, go do that, go be that person. I want you to be that for me for this show. I want you to be that for me for this music that I'm working on. And it's the meetings that I set up, it's the social media posts, it's what's your information for your BMI or your ASCAP to make sure that you get your royalties. Like, it's all those things to make sure that people understand that there's two types of people in this world, and when you interact with me as a leader, that's exactly what you're going to get.
I think I know we're going to segue right into this executive production with Robert Leslie Jr., because that's a good segue. But I just want to hit this for anybody listening. I just want to hallmark this, right? 85% of the time, I'm doing non-music stuff. 85% of the time, right? So if you got a thing, you're gonna do that 15% of the time. So you better love the other 85. Otherwise, the 15 better. It's good luck carrying you. Similarly, you mentioned kind of leadership being the evolution place that you found the greatest strength. Again, I want to highlight that and hallmark that. We're not talking musically. We're not talking you got better on the keys. Now that probably happened as well. But you're saying the number one improvement, the thing that evolved the most between your prior band or even from your prior performance to this one in July was leadership, right? Now, do you think when you mentioned your first band, your priorities were in the wrong place? Was it, and this is going to sound wild, but was the priority too much the music? Right? We're talking about that 85-15 split. Was that too much the priority? And so as a result, it kind of, it didn't work as a result of that.
85% music, 15% everything else, for sure. I can recall specific gigs where I was so fixated on the details of what we were trying to perform as a set list. It was for a worship set list, so it was in church.
Yeah.
That by the time we're performing it, everything just kind of like fell out of place, and it was just I had a friend of mine in the audience who I trusted, and I told him, hey, give me a rundown, like through text, play by play of how you feel this is going to go, or how it's going as you experience it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And it was all bad. It was all bad. And it wasn't him bashing me. It was me taking that constructive criticism and understanding, like, oh, okay, like, I focus how I'm going about this. And this was around the time that, A2 Nalito, as we know it today, existed. Not so much as a pianist only, more so as a producer, as a writer, as a creative. And yeah, ultimately it was one of those things where, these are those moments that I'm referring to that motivate me and say, like, okay, remember how this was? Yeah, we're trying to elevate beyond that, because I'm always thinking about if somebody were to like brush across this down the line and they happen to have seen like a previous iteration with the checkpoint conversation that we had at the beginning of this recording, I want to make sure if I'm showing anything, I'm showing evolution in the positive direction. I'm showing growth. I'm showing that a maturation of a final product. If you saw the A2 logo back in early 2010s, like the 2014 to 2016, 2017 era, and then seeing it now, like, I want you to kind of associate that and correlate that with growth in a sense. So there have definitely been times where it's been opposite, but these are growth opportunities that I always take.
No, and you mentioned earlier, right? And we'll walk right into this executive production, but it just, you mentioned earlier, right? Wanting you're comfortable getting your hands dirty if it's going to push you forward, right? And this is exactly that, right? The evolution of the logo, the evolution of yourself as a leader, the evolution of the focus on music versus non-music type things, right? And so that's all of that, right? It's just the evolution as you kind of walk into that. You mentioned Robert Leslie Jr., right, being the lead vocalist, maybe not the vocalist, but one of the, maybe the main vocalist on your last show. And he kind of prompted this conversation with the other vocalists, right, and the band that you guys were playing with around your executive, your music direction, right? And you should be moving down this executive production line, right? So help me out with where Robert kind of, where he nudged you, how he kind of instilled that confidence in you, and then how that led into you potentially helping him out in the next evolution of A2X.
So this is an opportunity for me to talk more about Robert. He is a fantastic vocalist, I'd say, influenced by gospel, R&B, soul. I actually have an interview with him on my podcast from around the time that we first met, and that's a meta conversation on him. So this is a really nice way to plug that in. It's called The Life of a Singer because this used to be his Instagram handle. Now his Instagram handle is Robert_Leslie Jr. on Instagram. So Robert and I have always had that musical connection because real recognize real. And when it came down to actually doing work together, by that point we had done like a random open mic that happened the day of. So there wasn't really a lot of things that we had done at the time. When I was finishing college, he was just starting there because he transferred for somewhere else. So, the times that we had spent at our alma mater didn't overlap completely, but we, definitely became friends first. And I think that's probably the most important thing about these relationships that I'm building with these artists and these musicians is that we are actually friends in real life. And Robert said this on the stage when we performed in Delancey, New York City last month, July 6th. We're friends in real life, and you can see it in our music and stuff. And there's a photo of two of the girls like holding hands while singing a song together. It's just like they're friends for real, that kind of thing. So our friendship had always been there. By the time he had finished college, I believe we were kind of in the thick of the pandemic, and he was just kind of getting settled with his new work. And, I was moving to Nashville at the time. So definitely still active in sharing that information, throughout my different phases of creativity. So by the time we started talking about doing a show together, I was in a place where I was already thinking more like an executive producer, that I wanted to have people, even if it meant hiring people, which you need to do anyways. I wanted to hire people to be featured vocalists for the shows that I direct. Doesn't mean that I don't want to sing. I just want to position people in the best possible place for success. And I'm a pianist, so I'm going to stay there. And if you sing well, then that's where I'm going to give you a mic. If you have a bass, if you play bass, then bring the bass guitar to the rehearsal. You know what I'm saying? If you got drums, let's talk about the kit, all that other stuff. So by the time I called him in April of 2023, I believe it was somewhere in the spring. I remember where I was. So it was definitely around the spring of 2023. I said, hey, let's do this December show, which, as I said, turned into this July show. And I told him, I need you to tell me your price and we're going to make it happen. And little did I know that we were going to go through so many changes, change the band. Of course, we changed the show dates, changed a lot of different things in order to make this happen. But he stayed consistent throughout that process. And, he even tripled down when I was expressing doubts, because, you're just so far from doing this because, again, of how much time you have, time that I gave myself, which I felt was my ally. But at the same time, it's nerve-wracking because of all the firsts that we mentioned of doing something before. So having that friendship, having the agreeable personality to create music with somebody all those things are really important nuances and components that I think really make a great working relationship. And so, along with this show came the desire for him rekindled to work on his own music. And by that point, produced a lot of my own work, remade a lot of other people's work. It was, we're in the 2020s now, so we're starting to come up on a decade of, my catalog and my portfolio. And as I mentioned before, he had seen all of that. We stayed friends throughout this entire process. And so we had a conversation and essentially talked about me looking over as an executive producer the work that he would be doing under his solo name, which is his given name. And I think moving forward, we have a lot of great things to expect from him, and as well as the individual who has started producing a lot of his records, and one of which we performed last month in July. And that's somebody that we talked about in Yuri, because Yuri has played on Film Hop Records in the past, and he has recorded on Film Hop live recordings, all of which we are queuing up and letting people know in that newsletter, because we got a lot going on. But ultimately, Robert is somebody that you definitely can hear as far as a distinct voice. You have like the John Legends, the Bon Ivers, Justin Vernons of the world, where that distinct timbre is noticeable. And I think Robert is one of those ones where, oh, that's Robert singing. Like, I could definitely hear that. Some people blend well, other people stand out well. And Robert's voice, in the best way possible, stands out.
That's fantastic. And I would imagine, as an executive producer, it's almost like you see his voice as an instrument, right? And it's just another component to the music, right? And so you can, how do I give him feedback on this very distinct voice to make sure it applies, kind of appropriately to the music. But again, that kind of comes back again to your kind of overall thesis around, that intersection of culture, intersection of music, intersection of thing. Again, we spoke about this in our last discussion, but just the intersection of things that don't necessarily make sense. Right, kind of film hop is one of those things, right? This hasn't been done before, right? Where we're creating hip hop music specifically in film score type of production, I guess is maybe the way to think about it. And so anyway, just this is similar, right? Where you could potentially use his voice as a contrast to other things you're doing in the production. Beyond Robert, are there other artists you're working with in an executive production kind of capacity? I know you'd like to develop other artists, right? And this sounds like he's almost a protege, right? It sounds like he was 3, 4, 5 years behind you, and you guys kind of struck up a friendship, but also similar, maybe some kind of a mentorship. Is there other artists you're working with that you'd like to develop and kind of bring up as well?
Definitely. And here's what I would say about the people that I'm working with at present, including Robert. This is all part of, again, our relationship as, brother to brother or brother to sister. And I think when it comes to artist development, I have learned to become highly sensitive of the artist's personal life in the context of how their music plays into that, because they're a person first. I think this is what I mean when I say leadership has grown for me, in a sense, because I was never really thinking like that before. And it was always about like, yo, you didn't send me them stems. Yo, you didn't hit me up for this remix. Yo, you didn't come to my show. It's a dub. No, it's not like that. You have to be more empathetic to, what people are going through. And, the artist friends that I am friends with, and the musicians that I know as friends, go through life the same way that we all do. And so the second thing that I would say about the people that I'm taking the time to build a working relationship with, they're not all quote unquote like singer-songwriters. Some of them are just like strictly producers. But you start to see the light bulbs come on when you have these conversations with them about what the bigger vision is. And how ultimately I like to use this word a lot, activate those individuals to, hey, that demo you sent me was amazing. Let's develop this a little bit more, that kind of thing. So shout out Ricky D, shout out Untamed People, aka Seth, shout out Alex/Yuri, Brittany, and there's a couple other people that, again, over time through the newsletter you're going to learn about, and I hope you learn to love, because these are people who are really good at what they do, and I've been seeing a lot of them develop their work from the very beginning. So ultimately looking forward to letting everybody know about who these people are and in their time.
I really resonate with that, because I one of the things it's a passion to me is to go show young killers that they're killers. They don't know that they're killers yet, and we got to go show them, right? I see you, and I know what you are going to become as long as you stay this path, or you kind of focus on what you need to focus on. So I love that you've got that bigger mission, because I think it's important and incumbent upon all of us who have walked any path, right? What we've done becomes a guidebook for somebody else later. So you're able to then say, to these people, whether they've done it or not, right? Activate them so that they can see exactly, you are a killer. Now here, that demo you gave me, here's where we can tweak that thing, and it's next level, right? So I think that I really resonate with that. And I think, again, we've all got a responsibility if we walk the path to make it the guidebook for somebody else, right? And so you with this executive producer kind of hat you're putting on here, certainly seems like that's part of the goal, right? Activate these people and get them going in a direction that they can head down. It seems how, like, previously you were very much the Kobe, Michael Jordan leader. Like, what's wrong with you? Why'd you miss that shot? Why didn't you give me the thing? How come you're late? How come you're not working as hard as I am, right? And you've kind of backed into, hey, these are real people, man. They got other stuff going on, right? These aren't, these aren't single-threaded folks, right? They've got other things in their lives, and so to be empathetic to that. Not that, but I bet you that also helps them channel whatever's going on through their music at the same time, right? Embrace it, accept it. Now here's how we can express it, right? And so I think it's really, really powerful stuff there.